Starting right now. So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to a new installment of The Gates of Trust by the 10th century scholar Rabbi Vigler. This study is so fundamental that the Chassam Sofer, the classic commentary on Talmud, would always start any Torah class with a 15-minute Torah lesson on the duties of the heart. That's this book, Duties of the Heart, part of which is Gates of Trust. It is so incredibly fundamental, accepted across the board, and something which we need to employ in our spiritual growth. Especially through these very challenging times where fear and anxiety is mounting. I hear that oil is now negative value. This is something extraordinary, never been in the history. And the world is changing in a very big way. The question is, are we changing to suit? Are we able to keep up? Or are we being fed all this information that's draining us and wearing us down, that's scaring us? Very important for us to be able to make sure that we are on the right wavelength, and that's why the Gates of Trust is so important to be able to. Why the Gates of Trust is so important to be able to keep our eye focused. What we're going to learn about today is a very important question, which is based on the doctrine of blind trust. That doctrine is that when we trust in God blindly, God reciprocates by blessing us blindly without calculating if we deserve it or not. If God is always in control, then why is it that the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper? This is an age-old, timeless question which can throw a wrench into anyone's faith. That's the question we're going to be addressing today. After validating the question, Rabbi Vigler is going to introduce us to his own perspectives on the answer. And it's going to be very interesting to put some new perspective, perhaps something which you've never thought about before, about why the wicked prosper, why the righteous suffer. To put things into perspective, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. In the meanwhile, I'd like to welcome Stephanie. I'd like to welcome Wellness Home Specialist, Julia and Brandon. And it seems like Zoom is what everybody would like. So this is good. Okay, I think it's going to be on Zoom. Very nice. Okay, let's go straight into it. If you have the book, we're at the bottom of page 387 in the Duties of the Heart. It's trust. It's the Gates of Trust, chapter 3. We're towards the end of chapter 3. Again, it's on page 387 in the book by Feldheim Publishers. This one, Duties of the Heart. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. Just follow along together with me. And the theme of today is when the righteous are afflicted and the wicked prosper. One might say we see some righteous individuals. Again, the context of the question is if God is always in control, then how come we don't see the wicked suffering and the righteous prospering? Why is it that it's the other way around? And of course, a special good morning to Sarah Kramer. Good morning, Shalom. So what's going on over here? It seems like God is not in charge. It seems like God is not in control. And our faith is challenged. Trying to get the screen straight. I can't tell. Okay, here goes. One might say, we see some righteous individuals who obtain their livelihood only after hard work and toil, while many transgressors are at ease and pass their lives in prosperity and comfort. Why? Our reply is that the prophets and pietists already inquired into this problem. So it's not a new problem. We've been struggling with this one for quite a while. One of them asks Jeremiah, why does the way of the wicked prosper? Another says, the prophet Habakkuk, why do you show me wrongdoing and look upon vice? Violence and oppression are before me. There is strife and contention rises, for the wicked surround the righteous. He continues, why keep silent when the wicked man devours one more righteous than he? King David had a specific problem with this. He really struggled. with this problem when he writes in Psalm 73, such are the wicked ever at ease. They increase in wealth. In vain have I kept my heart pure and washed my hands in innocence, for I have been constantly afflicted and I am chastened every morning. Prophet Malachi, sometimes known as Mordechai from the Purim story, according to some commentary in the Talmud, another speaking for his contemporaries, said they have tried God and escaped. And remember, Malachi lived at a time when the Jewish people returned back from Persia to build the second temple. There was rampant assimilation and desecration of Shabbat and other basic Jewish laws, and the wicked were prospering. So Malachi says they have tried God and escaped, and there are many other such passages. The prophet refrained, however, from giving an answer. So we validated the question, but we haven't really been able to find a good answer yet. And he also, the prophets refrained from explaining the reason for this, why the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer. Because the reason for the trial of each one of the saints and the reason for the prosperity in this world of each one of the wicked differs from one to the other. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer. You know, our lives, nothing about our lives is one-dimensional. And nothing, therefore, about our reward and punishment is one-dimensional. So the first thing is that he tells us right now is that there's a lot more than meets the eye. There's many ways to skin a cat here. So it's not like it's that simple to give it a basic simple answer. Moses' comment on the matter in the Torah was rather by Moses said the following with regards to this particular question. He says, the hidden things belong to Hashem our God, but those that are revealed belong to us and to our children. So Moses acquiesced and he said, look, there's certain things that are just outside of our ability to comprehend. We just can't fathom them. We can't capture. We'll never be able to understand. It's like the coronavirus. You know, we never really understand where it comes from, how these things come into existence. We just got to sort of make peace with it at some point, at least at this point. Similarly, the wise man said, King Solomon, if you see the oppression of the poor and the denial of justice and right in a country, do not wonder at his will. He's saying, listen, certain things you're just not going to be able to understand. I've said this before, that the chess piece is never going to be able to properly understand the wisdom of the chess master. Why should you be able to understand the wisdom of the chess master? You're a nothing pawn and he's the player. Why do you think you should be able to understand the wisdom of the chess master? We are created beings with finite wisdom. We only get like 100 years of life if we're lucky. 120. God is forever. Lives forever. Without a beginning, without an end. Hu haya, he was, hu haveh, he is, hu yeh, and he always will be. I mean, that's a pretty big difference between us and him. So why do we claim righteous indignation when we say, God, we don't understand what you're doing? You've got to recognize your place. You've got to be able to understand and say, listen, I'm just a created human being. And I'm never really going to be able to truly understand. To welcome Shelley. Good morning. Hi, Shelley. And to answer your question, Andy, we're in the third chapter of Trust in God, of the Gates of Trust. In the third chapter, near the end of the third chapter. It's like the third last paragraph. I'm not sure how they break up these paragraphs. Yeah, assuming that you have my book, we're at the bottom of page 389. Sorry, middle of page 389. And therefore, Scripture says, the rock, his deeds are perfect, and all his ways are just. We have a certain prayer that we say. We have a prayer that we say every time that somebody passes away. It's called Tziduk Hadin, the acceptance of judgment. You know, losing a loved one is never a pleasant experience. Is never an easy experience. When we're filled with grief and trauma, we actually say this blessing right as we're burying a loved one. Tziduk Hadin, of accepting upon ourselves the yoke, the judgment, the burden of God's decision. We say God gave and God took away, and we don't really understand this. You know, one of our members lost his mother. We sent out an email last night. And he's burying her this morning. Nobody can really be there. Nobody's coming to the funeral. Even I'm not at the funeral. Because it's a coronavirus. I mean, it's at the time of coronavirus. The person passed away from natural causes, but you can't really get together. It's so strange. I was trying to coach him through how to do a a funeral. Actually, that particular prayer you don't say today because today's still a day where you don't say Tachdun. It's still the month of Nisan. In any event, welcome, Susan. Let's get back to this. So far, we validated the question and sort of punted the answer by saying, you know what, we're never going to really understand this answer. But we've got to give it more. Rabbeinu B'chai is such a classic commentary, such a brilliant philosopher. Look at how he's going to approach this question, which is an age-old question. We've been asking this question forever. Let's address this question right now in the way that Rabbeinu B'chai himself, in his humility and his wisdom, is able to explain the answer. So at the bottom of page 389, if you have the book, if you just joined us, we're learning the gates of trust, which is the Jewish approach to conquering fear and anxiety. How can we replace fear with hope, anxiety with faith? Because, like FDR said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. It is the fear itself which will chase away the blessing from us, and it is the trust itself which will draw the blessing upon us. Right now, what we need to be doing is exercising not just our body, but exercising our soul's ability, our mind's and heart's ability to trust in troubled times, because it is that ability to trust in troubled times that will draw the blessing of safety, security, prosperity upon us and all of our loved ones. That's what we're doing in this class every weekday morning at 8:30, is that we're studying the gates of trust to be able to flex the muscles and exercise our ability to trust in God by going through this 10th century work incorporated in the duties of the heart, called the Gates of Trust. That's the name of the section. We're near the end of chapter 3. Nevertheless, I think it's proper to suggest explanations of this matter, which will at least to some extent be satisfactory. Why is it that the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer? We're going to give now a new perspective, which opens a whole vista, a whole new horizon that helps us understand that as human beings, our perception is very limited. We don't see what came before we showed up. We don't see what comes after we leave the scene. All that we see is what's on the stage. But there's a whole thing going on in the wings. Backstage, there's all sorts of stuff going on. And you can't just make a decision, you know, when you're watching a movie and you see, oh my gosh, this person is killing that person. And you say, this is wicked and this is righteous. But if you realize that there was a movie that came before this, there was a prequel and there's a sequel and there's all sorts of things going on, just because you saw an isolated case of violence, it doesn't mean that the victim is truly a victim and the aggressor is truly an aggressor. How do you know it's not an act of revenge? How do you know it's not something else going on? There's more than meets the eye, and that's the kernel of the answer that Rabbeinu B'chai is going to share with us right now. So what we're about to learn right now is hopefully material to really get you thinking. Something that you can definitely discuss with your spouses, give you some really good material to discuss with your children, with your friends, you know, during this time of quarantine. The big question, why do the righteous suffer and why do the wicked prosper? Good morning, Harvey. Welcome. Good morning, Cookie and Mickey. Shalom. We missed you guys. Okay, now, one more thing I want to say, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, if you could like this video, if you could share this video to your page, it would be fantastic, so we can incorporate other people in the Torah study to share the wisdom of Torah, to share the experience of connecting with each other in these socially distant times where we can be even more spiritually connected. Please share this video so we can spread the word and spread the light in troubled times. So here's the answer to the question, why the wicked prosper, why the righteous suffer. I suggest the following reasons why the opportunity to obtain his livelihood without trouble and trial might be withheld from the righteous man. He's going to give us about 4 or 5 reasons over here. It may be a consequence of a previously committed sin, for which he is now paying the penalty, as it says. Even the righteous get their deserts on earth. Now, let me put this into perspective. Not everything that happens to us is a punishment. However, it is a well-known concept in Jewish philosophy that God will try to punish the righteous in this world for their minority sins, so that when they enter heaven, they are all clear to experience the pleasures of heaven unencumbered. And we're not talking about 72 virgins right now, by the way. We're talking about a soulful experience, a soul which is a piece of God coming home in the presence of God. There's no physical pleasure in heaven. There is spiritual experience, which is what our soul is. When the resurrection of the dead comes comes to take place with the coming of the Mashiach. That's when the souls in heaven will be reunited with the bodies down here, and that's when we'll be able to experience physical pleasure again. That's the coming of Mashiach. That's the ultimate reward. But for the meanwhile, heaven is a spiritual experience, and that is where the souls want to experience the pleasures of the next world without being encumbered by the minority sins that they had in this world. And that's why God will punish the righteous in this world for the little bit of sin that they have in this world, and therefore the righteous suffer. And the converse will happen to the wicked, where God will reward the wicked in this world with their minority merits, so that when they go up to heaven, they'll go straight to the basement, straight to purgatory, and they won't be able to be rewarded then with the merit that they had. So let's analyze this concept a little bit. It may be the consequence of a previously committed sin for which he's now paying the penalty, as it says, even the righteous get their deserts on earth. We're going to explore, we're going to expand on it on the converse side, on the side of the sinner. Sometimes it is in accordance with the principle of compensation in the world to come, as it says, to do you good at your latter end, which means there is a plan. God knows what he's doing. The fact that he's giving the wicked a reward right now is not the end of the game. You know, here we always say, a lot of people will tell me that if somebody died, how could that be a good thing? How could it be a good thing if a righteous person suffered, and Rabbi, you say it's going to be good in the end, but they died. It's all over now. It's game over. The answer is it's not game over. It's not. Dying in this world is the end of one scene. There's other scenes that come after this. And just because you've been authorized to observe only one scene, it doesn't mean that that's all that exists. There's life before we're born. There's life after we're born. Remember, our souls are eternal. They are a piece of God. This is fundamental to our faith. Tanya chapter 2. What makes us who we are, what makes us Jewish, is our godly soul. It's a piece of God. It's indestructible. It's forever. So just because you showed up in this earth and you had a certain experience, that's not the be all and end all. Life doesn't begin at birth. It doesn't end at death. So there's much, much, much more than meets the eye. And now we can begin to understand why Moses says to us, listen, certain things you're not going to be able to understand. Moses says to us in the Torah, we read it moments ago, the concealed things are, the hidden things belong to Hashem, our God, but those that are revealed belong to us and our children. There's only certain things that God allowed us to understand. And we have to have faith to say, you know what? God knows what he's doing. For example, how can death be a good thing? Hi, Adam. Good morning. Before I get to your point, Richard, I want to say that if somebody passes away from this world, how do you know? Yes, I guess Richard's question is really the answer. When Richard said previous sin in this lifetime only, it's really got to do with reincarnation. And that's really his next point. So it's kind of connected here. The next point is that how do you know that the person's not experiencing some sort of a completion of a mission from a previous lifetime? Could it be that maybe the soul was sent down to this world to meet a certain person, to engage in a certain encounter, to do a certain mitzvah? And once that mission is accomplished, the person is ready to go back home. So for us, we think that life begins at birth and ends at death. But as far as the bigger picture is concerned, once the person finished their mission, they're off the stage and they're able to be free to go back to their families. You know, we are sitting in the theater. We only see the people on the stage, and only the people on the stage is what makes us happy. But when we don't think about the fact that the guy that goes off the stage when he finishes his parts is now able to go back to his family and he's happy. You see what I'm saying? So it's got to do with the Soda Gilgul, the secret of reincarnation. It might be a sin from a previous lifetime, like you suggest, Richard. Absolutely. It could absolutely have to do with a previous lifetime, and that's really what he's saying over here. When we see the righteous suffer, this could be finishing off some mission from a previous lifetime. And the same goes for seeing the wicked prosper. Same exact thing. And there are many, many stories to illustrate this point. The famous story of the reincarnated prince. In very, very brief, it's a story of a couple that came to the Baal Shem Tov for a blessing for a child. And after many years of pleading, the Baal Shem Tov eventually acquiesced and he blessed them with a child. But the child died at a young age, maybe 10 years old. So the bereaved parents came crying to the Baal Shem Tov. They said, what did we do wrong? How could this happen to us? And he explained to them a story of a king and queen, a non-Jewish king and queen who were desperate for a child, and they basically decreed a decree of banishment upon the Jewish citizens if they wouldn't pray to God to make the queen pregnant, right? Like, it's our problem. They prayed, and some soul up in heaven agreed to go become the prince. Some Jewish soul became the prince. Spent the first 10 years of his life living in the non-kosher palace, but after that, somehow he found his way to spiritual fulfillment, to find his way to a Jewish lifestyle. But the first 10 years of his life, that beautiful soul was living in a non-kosher home, and therefore that soul needed to come back to this world to live 10 years of purity, 10 years of kosher. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov said to the bereaved parents. You had the great and distinct honor and privilege of hosting this tremendous soul as your child for 10 years. So it's not like it's all over. It's just that you've been able to give this beautiful soul what it needed, and now it's done. So it's moved on. We don't have to see this as the be-all and end-all. Now, it's obviously easier to speak about this from a distance, when it's not your child, God forbid, right? Admitted. Fair. And to anybody here who's lost a loved one, I obviously understand that I'm speaking ideologically right now, and I did that. But at least I can share with you, as your rabbi, I can share with you the wisdom of the Torah, so you can apply it in whichever way you're able to. Helen, this goes back to blind trust. You have to trust or not, no in between. Absolutely. I mean, for sure, you have to trust. Blind trust. Agreed, Helen. No disagreement over here. It's Warren, sorry. Warren is saying that it's blind trust, and I agree, yeah. You have to have blind trust. That's the essence of faith over here. There's a big difference between faith and trust, but in this particular concept, it's exactly what Moses told us. Remember, now we go back to the words of Moses. The hidden things belong to Hashem our God. Well, it's really written in the Torah. The hidden things belong to Hashem our God, but those that are revealed belong to us and to our children. There's certain things that you just can't understand. There's nothing you can do about it. It's like the story of creation. It's blind trust, because no scientist is able to prove that God created the world, as much as the scientists want to prove that. They would love nothing more than to be able to prove that God created the world, but they can't, because you can't put God into a test tube. You can't put God into a laboratory. So there's no way to prove it. So you have to have that leap of faith. Hence the expression coined. Commentary coming in over here. Jonathan, welcome. Brandon, in the concept of reincarnation, the soul is reincarnated in another body. Why would God punish the new body for the sins of the previous body? So there's two levels to this answer, Brandon. First of all, you can look at the body as the Uber. Who we are is really our soul. I am my soul. My body is the Uber. It's the taxi. Don't get too emotionally involved in your taxi, because you're going to leave the taxi at some point and move on with your life. So that's one level to answer the question. A second level to answer the question is an analogy from the Talmud Sanhedrin, which says that one of the Roman emperors asked Rabbi Yehuda, the prince, about reward and punishment. He said, look, when a person sins, it's the body and the soul. So why would it be that only the soul gets punished in heaven? So Rabbi Yehuda responded, and he said that the resurrection of the dead, he asked about heaven, why is it that only the soul is rewarded or punished in heaven, but what about the body? And that's when he answered, resurrection of the dead is when the soul and the body will be reunited and will be able to experience the ultimate reward. So I hope that answers your question, even though much of the stuff we're not able to truly understand. I'm actually studying a Kabbalistic work by the Arizal now, Sefer HaGilgulim, the Book of Reincarnation, by the Arizal, who's 15th century. Tzfat, unbelievable stuff. So I'm getting into this stuff. It's fascinating. Adrian, what about the sins from the previous generation visited up to 200 years after? So there is a concept of children not being punished for the previous generation. Children don't get punished for the sins of their ancestors. So not into that kind of stuff. Sorry about that. Susan, if you understand this concept, which is not easy to do, you'll be able to deal with life as it is today with less anxiety and stress. I agree. So yes, if you can adopt Warren Ellick's leap of faith and accept and embrace this truth, then a lot of things come into perspective. Remember, there's a lot of things in life that you don't understand. Like the anecdote of the child who, when the cell phones came out, a child turns to his father and he says, "Dad, I don't understand. How does this phone work with? It doesn't even have wires." So the father looks at his son and he says, "1 second. And with wires, you do understand how this thing works." We don't know how it works half the time, anyways. I mean, we use cell phones. We don't know how they work. We use regular phones. We don't know how they work. We eat food and we don't have a clue how this food digests into our body. I was speaking to my doctor in South Africa, passed away of blessed memory, Dr. Rodney. He told me that he was like one of the top doctors in South Africa, a really amazing guy. And he said that after, 25 or 35 years of medicine, he thinks we understand maybe 5% of what goes on in the body. We don't really understand how it works. We don't have a clue. We kind of scratch in the surface, but yet we do it anyways. And the same thing, we can employ the same wisdom, the same approach to say, you know what? We're going to do our best when it comes to the principle of reincarnation as well. Because yes, reincarnation does help us put things into perspective. Instead of walking around with a chip on your shoulder all day long, thinking about why God is so nasty to you, or maybe so good to you, you can listen, maybe there's more than meets the eye over here. And, think that I just don't understand, and I just got to roll with the punches, right? So Brandon, Hashem, the soul you have given me is pure. This is our morning prayers. How can a pure soul sin? So there's much discussion about this in the 30 chapters of Tanya. But generally speaking, the pure soul is enclosed within the animal soul. And whatever sin the animal soul does, it schleps with it the godly soul. In the words of Tanya chapter 23, I think it was, which is the last chapter, 24, the last chapter we learned, we're about to learn chapter 25. The Alter Rebbe says that anytime a Jew sins, it's like taking the king's head and pushing it into the toilet during the time of the sin. Admittedly, you can clean his head after the sin. You can do teshuvah. But think about what you did at the time of the sin. I mean, it was unacceptable, it was unforgivable almost, the fact that you put the king's head down the toilet. That's what's happening every time you sin, because you have a godly soul with you, and wherever you go, you schlep your godly soul with you. So you are causing this pure godly soul to sin each and every single time that you are doing a sin yourself. Now, Stephanie's asking a fascinating question here. Good morning, Schweiger. Which body will the soul enter? So, in the case of reincarnation, which is always a fascinating topic, and I'm always itching to rerun that course, Journey of the Soul, which I think people would really enjoy. I know Marty really enjoyed it the first time he did that course with his rabbi up in New Jersey. When the soul reincarnates, it comes into another body, as Brandon correctly pointed out. So which body will the soul enter? I'm assuming that your question, Stephanie, is about the resurrection of the dead. When Mashiach will come, which body will the soul enter? If assuming that I've been to this earth, let's say 5 or 6 times, the Arizal says you can only be here a maximum of 7 times. And the Rebbe says we're all on our last run right now. So now is the do or die moment for us to do teshuvah, by the way. So if you've been here, let's say 7 times before, let's say we were here, all of us, during the generation that left Egypt, according to the Arizal. Let's say we were here during the Spanish Inquisition, maybe during the Crusade, maybe we were 18th century France. Who knows where we were, right? So which body will you resurrect in? I mean, is the real me the Jew that came out of Egypt? Is the real me the 2020 Dovid Vigler? Is the real me the 18th century? Who knows what my name was? The answer is that each and every one of those bodies will be resurrected. And let's say you lived 7 times, you'll come back. There'll be 7 of you, right? You'll be like 7 siblings. Like you have brothers and sisters, you have sister souls, sister bodies. Okay, so let's, a lot of comments coming in here. Andy, people have to accept their own limitations, especially in their own understanding. If they don't, their ego gets the better of them. Yeah. if you say that I demand to understand everything about life, and if I don't understand something, then I refuse to engage in it, that's just only a fool would say that. You'd starve to death before you'd ever understand the human digestive system. You just roll up into a ball and do nothing because you don't have a clue about how the human body even operates. So obviously we have to accept the fact that we are created beings. Our minds and ability to comprehend is limited, and certain things you just got to roll with the punches. Yes, Chabad is about logic and understanding as much as possible, but what you don't understand, you have to realize, is built on a bedrock of faith. Emunah is our faith, is our foundation, and on top of that we build logic, rational understanding. What was yesterday's faith is today's understanding, but I recognize that today's understanding leaves a tremendous amount of faith, right? And it was Moses, actually, at the end of his life. It says he reached Mount Nebo. If you remember, that Moses was buried. He looked at the land of Israel before he entered the promised land. He didn't enter the promised land, but he gazed upon the promised land from a mountain called Mount Nebo, Nebo, Nebo. Now, if you look at that word, Chassidus explains it's actually, you can read it as Nun Bo, which Nun is the numerical value of 50. Nun Bo, 50 is in it. There are 50 gates of wisdom, of Bina. Moses was able to climb the rungs of all the 49 gates of wisdom, and no mortal was ever able to reach the 50th. So he was able to sort of climb the mountain, but never actually experience the 50th gate. Moses is the ultimate paradigm of a human being, the height of humanity, what a human being is able to reach. That's what Moses was able to reach. He reached the 50th gate, Nun Bo, the gate of comprehension. But beyond that, he wasn't able to go further. By the way, even King Solomon, the wisest of all men, it says about him, that there were 3 things that he couldn't understand. Even Solomon, the wisest of all men, says, listen, there's a limitation. And with that approach, we're able to, really take on the big questions, like this big question, which is why the righteous suffer and why the wicked prosper. We're able to take it in stride by saying, listen, there are things that came before we were born and things that will happen after we die that we just don't understand. And it's got to do with the Soda Gilgulim, with the secret of reincarnations that might have everything to do with the previous lifetime, that I was dispatched to this world just to do a favor for another, like the famous song goes, for 70, 80 years, a soul may wear and tear. Just to do a favor for another. You might have been sent to this world just to do a favor for another person. Who knows? Maybe I came to this world just to connect with a Jew through this medium. Who knows? Who knows why I'm here? I don't know. And once that mission is accomplished, maybe you're ready to move on. God forbid. I mean, we want to have revealed goodness. We want to stay here as long as possible and enjoy our family and enjoy our friends and be able to experience our mission and purpose in this world in the fullest measure. But we recognize that we're only on stage for a certain scene. And once that scene is done, we're done. We're ready to move on. Marty says was the best course ever. It was the journey of the soul. I believe if you want to hear that course, you can go to our website. Just search on jewishgardens.com. Go to audio classes. Just search in the search box, audio classes, and you'll see my class that I gave in that, the journey of the soul. It's in there. I think you'll enjoy it if you want to hear it. Susan, does the soul seek out a body that will help its mission, it accomplish its mission? Yeah, I mean, in heaven, they assign a certain, every soul which has a certain mission is given a certain tools, right? So the soul actually chooses not just your body, you actually choose your parents, Susan. You choose which parents you want to aid you on your mission. How's that? Right? So you actually get to pick your parents. You know, you get to hear these crazy stories of kids that are suing their parents for, there was a story recently of a kid who sued his parents for giving birth to him, for conceiving him without his permission. Crazy world. But according to Jewish philosophy, it's the soul that picks the parents. You know, should I be born into a rabbi's family? Should I be born into a family of murderers? Should I be the son of Al Capone? I read the other day, Al Capone's son, he died in Northern California. He actually legally changed his name. He dropped the name Capone from his last name. But imagine having a father like Al Capone. You know, a soul will choose their certain mission in this world, right? So if Stephanie's coming back as a 5'7" and blonde, who knows, Stephanie? But hey, wherever you come back, just make sure you identify yourself to me. I'd love to know. I mean, let's like introduce each other. And by the way, it says then that we will be very, it's been a very joyous time. Psalms 127. Then our mouths will be filled with laughter. It's going to be a lot of fun, right? It's getting to know each other on a whole new level. I guess, yeah. So let's just wrap up this piece before we get into Tanya. So sometimes it is in accordance with the principle of compensation in the world to come, as it is written, to do you good at your latter end. And that is from Devarim, the last book of the Torah. Sometimes it is to demonstrate his patience and positive outlook in the service of his creator. So now we're moving from a reincarnation approach to a testing approach. Again, God is testing you to demonstrate his patience and positive outlook in the service of his creator may be exalted, so that other people might learn from him, as is known to you from the case of Job. The case of Job was a righteous man who suffered unspeakable tortures. Why? Because God wanted him to be an example to others. Maybe God needs you to demonstrate his patience and positive outlook in the service of the creator. Basically, you're being tested. And when you realize that you're being tested again, it changes everything. God is constantly testing us. That's what Jewish philosophy tells us. He wants to see how we're going to react under pressure. And God derives great pleasure from seeing our positive choices, and tremendous sadness from watching us fail in our missions. When you realize that our loving Father is testing us, you're on stage. And not only is God watching us, but in the gallery, you've got your Bubbies and your Zaydis and all of your ancestors who believed in you for all time. And they're watching and they're waiting in the wings. They're like, what's my Bubbala going to do? You don't want to disappoint. I picture the scene of being in the football field. You know, we here in America, we have these huge football stadiums, and you have 80,000 people in the stands, 100,000 people in the stands, and the millions watching on television. And you got like 12 people on the football pitch, or maybe 11 people on each side. And you finally got the ball, and it's like the whole world is holding their breath. And what are you going to do with that ball? Are you going to pass? Are you going to run? Are you going to throw it? Are you going to... Will the ball pass the line? Will it not pass the line? Will it make it before the bell, before the whistle rings or not? And as you get the ball, you sit down, you sit down on the field with the ball, and you say, you know, I'm not even sure if there is a game going on. I'm not sure if there is a God. And everybody's like, Tatale, let's talk about this later. Just run with the ball. Let's wrap this deal up. When you realize that you're being tested, it's a paradigm shift. It's like a chiropractic adjustment when you realize that I'm being tested here. Let me deliver the goods. Let's argue about this later and just deliver the goods, right? Let me finish this paragraph here. At times it is because of the wickedness of a good man's contemporaries, because the other people in your generation, that the Creator may be exalted, tries the good man with poverty, want, and sickness in order to exhibit his piety and devotion in the service of God in contrast to their conduct. As it says, but it was our sickness that he bore, our pain that he suffered. This, by the way, the Christians love to use this verse to explain why he, their God, died for your sins. They love to use this verse in Isaiah 53:4. But what it's talking about is that the tzaddik of a generation, the righteous person of a generation, will often bear their sins where they are too spiritually weak to handle the punishment. So he will take the bullet for the team. Not that somebody died for your sins before you were even born, but that during that generation, the leader of the generation, the Rebbe of the generation, the Moses of the generation, the shepherd of the generation, will suffer discomfort so that his sheep will be comfortable. And that's a very powerful concept in Jewish philosophy. That the shepherd will suffer discomfort so that the sheep will have good grass to pasture. Right? He'll be out in the fields for weeks at a time, you know, without shelter. He'll suffer the discomfort of living in the rain and the outdoors so that his sheep will have nice grass to eat from. So that's another concept which we're being introduced here to, which is the concept that There's much, much, much more than meets the eye when you're seeing the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer. Could it be that the righteous has understood, the Rebbe of the generation has understood that the wicked would not be able to handle a suffering, an economic depression, so he'll take the economic hit in order that his beloved children, his beloved flock, will be able to prosper and thrive in difficult times. So that's really what's going on over here. And one final perspective from the Rabbeinu B'chai, sometimes it is because of his failure to demonstrate zeal for God's cause and exact punishment from his contemporaries, as you know from the account of Eli and his sons, of whom Scripture says, and everyone who is left in your house will come to bow low to him for a bit of money and a loaf of bread. Basically, the story goes about Eli, who was the high priest in the days of Samuel, when Samuel was a baby. And Eli was a very, very righteous man, a very holy man, but he had two sons that were lowlifes. Chafni and Pinchas were their names, and they would take full advantage of all the people that came to the temple, to the tabernacle, where it was located. I believe it was in Shiloh at that time. And it was soon after the Jews came into the Holy Land after Joshua. So because Eli didn't criticize his sons for their misbehavior, for their taking advantage of the Jewish men and women, therefore he was considered implicit in the act. And therefore, when a righteous man doesn't criticize, rebuke his co-religionists, the people of his generation, it's sometimes considered as if he himself did that sin. Another example is King Solomon. It says that King Solomon died an idol worshiper. Can you imagine? King Solomon died an idol worshiper. The reason was because he had many, many wives, many more than he was allowed to. He thought that he was smart, by the way. He thought that he was allowed to have one of the prohibitions in the Torah, one of the very last mitzvahs in the Torah, I think it's number 611 or 612, is that you're not allowed to have too many wives. Men out there, listen, you're not allowed to have too many wives. It was a rabbi 1,000 years ago who instituted, Rabbeinu Gershom was his name. He says you're not allowed to be married to more than one wife. Thank God. But according to Torah, the polygamy is technically allowed. It's a rabbinical law, by the way. So for anybody who scoffs at rabbinical law, maybe you should have more than one wife. But the Torah itself does allow for polygamy. But for kings, you're not allowed to have too many wives. I think the limit is 18 wives. Chai is a good number, right? You're not allowed to have more than 18 wives for a king, I believe it is. King Solomon had like 1,000 wives. But because these wives started worshiping idolatry, and King Solomon didn't condemn and criticize them, therefore he himself is considered the idol worshiper. So this answer that we get today from Rabbeinu B'chai is that the righteous can suffer in many cases because they didn't condemn the wicked, and therefore they're considered complicit. Today we spoke about why the righteous suffer. Tomorrow we're going to talk about why the wicked prosper. So we've had a lot of ideas. We're going to kick them around more tomorrow. I'm going to take just some comments of it before we move on to Tanya. On YouTube, Elaine, is it only applicable to Jewish souls? I don't think it's only applicable to Jewish souls. No, every person is created for a reason. Jewish people have a certain mission in this world. The non-Jewish people have also a certain mission in this world. I just often speak about Jewish people because the texts that we learn are geared at Jewish souls and the Jewish construct. Therefore, I speak in the context of the Jewish souls. But obviously, non-Jews have a mission in this world as well and also experience reward and punishment. Julia, always with the tough questions. A child with a degenerative disease, we should never be able to even pronounce such a word. We should never be able to know what it is. A child with a degenerative disease dies after much suffering. Obviously, parents too suffered. Did that person sin so much that he was punished? If that's a terrible thought for the child, if so, that's a terrible thought for the child and family to carry. Our perspective on handicapped, on special needs children is often incorrect. The Talmud calls a blind man saginaho, which means an abundance of light in Aramaic. Because he has more light, more vision than his body can handle. And therefore his eyes, his eyeballs can't express the light of the soul within him. It's been known that children of special needs, people of special needs, have capacity, have soul capacity and talent that other normal people don't have. They have like an overcompensation of light. So not to endorse, such a condition, but to say that maybe there's something about those souls that we don't understand. Maybe those souls needed to come down to this world for a very specific mission. Not to minimize or mitigate the suffering that the entire family endures. I heard a friend of mine once told me that you can't imagine. He has a son of special needs. He says, you cannot imagine how hard it is to live with a child of special needs. It's something which you cannot fathom, and nobody should ever need to know. So again, I'm not God's defense attorney here, Julia. Remember that. I'm not God's defense attorney. I'm not here to condone and endorse his behavior or to explain it away. I can only share with you the teachings of what the Torah does tell us. And I am the first one, Julia, to say to you that we want Mashiach now, that no child should ever have to suffer. And my Rebbe and our Rebbe, always taught, he pleaded for toiv, hanira, ve'anigle, for good that is revealed, obvious, and apparent. We don't want this hidden good stuff. Yes, we learn about hidden good, and there's no such thing as evil. There is only revealed good, and there's only hidden good, and revealed good, and hidden good. There's no such thing as evil. The Rebbe would always say, listen, we don't want the hidden good. How about you turn the hidden good, make it revealed, and then we can all enjoy it. I had a teacher in high school, made a big impression upon me, Rabbi Chazdan. I don't know if Yoni is still there from Johannesburg, but Rabbi Chazdan would often say to us in high school, he would say, it's only funny if everybody is laughing. It's only funny if everybody's laughing. And I say the same thing to Hashem. I say, God, I'm glad that you find a lot of meaning in the suffering of the righteous, in the handicapped person, in the special needs child. I'm sure that you know what's going on over here, but how about you let us in on the secret as well? How about we all enjoy it? And that's what we're yearning for with the coming of the Mashiach. Mashiach is enlightenment. It's uncovering the foreskin of our eyes. Can you imagine there's a foreskin covering over our eyes that makes us blind and insensitive to what's going on around us? That is what we yearn for, Julia. God, open our eyes. Let us in on the secret. Let us understand why. We want revealed goodness. We don't want to have to grope in the darkness anymore. We want to be able to see, to feel, to understand, to appreciate. That is what Mashiach is about. And I'm glad that you agree with me, Brandon. Thank you. Thank you for that. It was a tough question from Julia. Always a tough question. Marty, I'm not sure what your oi comment is about on Facebook. I'm not getting it in real time because I'm sometimes delayed. My Shviger, it's only funny if everybody's laughing. How true and beautiful lesson in life. Thank you, Shviger. I said that to one of my kids the other day. We always try to make light of any little bump and scrape and fall. And one of my kids, he was like really upset about it. And I said to him what Rabbi Chazdan said. I said, you know what, you're right. Because if you're not finding it funny, then whilst the rest of us are trying to make light of the situation, it really isn't funny. And we've got to really validate your pain and your struggle over here. So that's, the too many wives, buddy. Okay, good. I wonder what Judy thinks about that one. So anyways, I'm not endorsing polygamy. Let me be clear. I'm not endorsing polygamy. One wife is awesome, the best. And I can't imagine what life would even look like with more than one wife.